series with the central title, Stopping Violence in America, on this Wednesday, June 29, 2022. Today, we have another very prolific speaker and experienced person who has dealt with the area of violence and crime and the different angles that we have been discussing. As you know, dealing with violence and crime in America is with this resurgence of shootings everywhere. It's like every day I hear a shooting, every day. So there's a whole big hoopla and of dealing with guns, but we know that the guns is a problem, but it's also an inanimate object. And we want to deal with those who are the ones who manipulate that particular object and what is causing them to be violent and to commit different crimes that we have been hearing so prolifically every day. Every time you turn on the news or you just go on to the internet, every day it's like an epidemic at this point in America and around the world. So as you know, we had some great speakers in the past, and one of the things that we are projecting and going to do is to hear these speakers and hear their valid angles in dealing with crime in America, and also eventually bringing them in for even a panel discussion in the area of their particular expertise and the angle that they will be addressing. Today, I have one of my great friends and a great persons and a great doctor and a great human being who has also come on some of our other previous webinars dealing with family values. And we had a wonderful conference here in Washington, D.C. together. And she was there and just was an incredible experience with her. And so this is our dear sister, friend, leader, Reverend Dr. Madeline Clark Alexander. Her topic today is trauma triggers and changing the trajectory. Just let you know that Dr. Alexander is the founder of House of Judah Empowerment Outreach Ministries. Without any further ado, we'd like to introduce and allow our sister to come on and share this topic, trauma triggers and changing the trajectory. Welcome, Dr. Alexander. Good to see you again.
Good to see you as well. Good to see you as well. Thank you so much, Reverend Oliver, for sharing this platform and answering the call for the gathering of people to have such a dialogue. We're talking about stopping the crime in America. Your timing is definitely impeccable because we're seeing more violence now that we've ever seen in our lifetime. So when we talk about changing the trajectory, we have to look at what's going on, what's actually happening. And we're looking at a society, we're in a place where society is traumatized. So when we're talking about how to help, we have to first try to figure out what's actually happening. So I'm going to start with trauma. We want to stop the violence in America. Let's look at the trauma. Let's look at the overall society of what we're actually dealing with. Let's look at the let's pick our brains and think about this, walk through this thing together to see what's actually happening. And it's hard for us to understand, but we have to take place and add value to what's happening and how it's happening. So we're going to look at trauma triggers and changing the trajectory, changing the past. When we think about trauma and people being traumatized, There's many different ways of looking at it. However, there's three types of trauma. There's acute trauma, which is a result from one single incident. There's chronic trauma, which is repeated and prolonged, such as domestic violence, such as the abuse, such as neglect. Then we're going to talk about complex trauma, which is exposure to very multiple types of trauma. When we look at our backgrounds, there might be a place in our background where we experience some trauma. But how did we deal with it? Did we have the tools that we need? Because I'm certainly identifying the fact that people that are dealing with trauma and triggers in this time have absolutely no idea as to what's happening. We have this saying, and I'm sure you guys have probably heard it as well: hurting people hurt people. Well, what does that mean? Well, what does that look like? You know, we as adults, as being mature, we might look at being hurt by someone, but our goal is to reverse that. And if you hurt me, for me to be able to turn my other cheek. Now, what I want to be clear about, I only have two cheeks. Okay, I want to be clear about that. But in our level of maturity, we have different ways of dealing with things. When I look at the 18-year-old that shot up the school in Texas, when I look at the 18-year-old that shot up the supermarket in New York, when I think about the 18-year-old that crossed the line and went over to Missouri shooting, well, one thing we have to realize about them is at 18, you might be of an adult age according to society. However, your brain is still developing. So psychologically, you don't even have the wherewithal or the mindset to navigate what's really right and what's wrong, other than what you have been taught. So we have to look at those things and take those things into consideration. Reverend Oliver said, when we're watching the news at night, every night there's a shooting. Where are these guns coming from? Every night, on every other corner, there's a shooting. There's a drive-by. Here in Indianapolis, there was a probation officer sitting in her office and was grazed with a bullet on yesterday. She was in her office. How much more protection that can you ask for than that, of being in a safe place, of being in your home? Because we're also hearing on the news where people are getting shot in their homes. So what's the responsibility of society? Number one, where are these guns coming from? Number two, why are they getting into the hands of our young people or of people that are mentally unstable? We have a whole society of people that are suspect of being bipolar or schizophrenic. How many cases, how many people are walking around undiagnosed or misdiagnosed? When you talk about the African American community, we're coming into a place of knowledge now of being able to seek mental health counseling because of the stress that's upon us. And because those of us that have influence are talking more and more about getting the help that you need, are talking more and more about and bringing people to a place of understanding of you can't handle this alone. Yes, we want to pray. Yes, we want to bring them into prayer. Yes, we want to, tell them what God's capable of doing. We want to tell them that you can renew your mind through the word of God. But when you're dealing with a community that's unchurched, what do you tell those people? How do you reach those people? Number one, you can't reach them if they have a need. So if they have a need of housing, if they have a need of food, if they have a need of the basic principles of basic living, those needs have to be met first. So how do we meet those needs? So we have to uncover, it's like peeling back an onion. We have to take off the layers to see, like Reverend Oliver said, a gun is an inanimate object. If you lay it on the table, it's not going to go off by itself. But how are those guns getting into the hands of our young people, of our underserved people, our underserved community? How are they getting into the hands of those that are mentally challenged? How is that happening? So let's, as we take a look at that and take a look at the possible backgrounds of the community at large. How many people in your community have you spoke with that haven't been diagnosed with a mental health issue? However, you see them on a daily basis and you see them deteriorating in your community. You see their conversations are changing. You see their overall appearance are changing. So we have to be mindful and look into our communities, because that's where it starts, in our neighborhoods, in our homes, in our families. That's where it starts. So if we can share that information in the community. I, as a senior medical social work consultant, I worked in the community and with a program called Healthy Families of America. It's a nationwide program, and what we would do as social workers is go into the home and assist the whole family, the mother, the father, and the children. If there was a single parent home, because some fathers are raising their children, believe it or not, give credit where credit is due, a single parent home, give them the skill set, give them the tools that they need to actually make better decisions. Some things only can be changed by the renewing of your mind, because if you have a pathology that's one way that has set you on this path, that is your norm. That's what you're conditioned to. But if it's not working, how do you change those things? So with Healthy Families of America, we went in and sat with the family and did a need assessment to see what their needs were. Because sometimes we have an ideal and we want to present it to people, and that's not what they need. Oh yeah, well, it's a good idea. It's a very good idea, but do the person need it? So in our families and in our communities, we have to start talking and doing needs assessments outside of what happened today. We have to start taking some preventive measures. We have to start talking more and putting the responsibility not on the person, because if a person already has a broken back from responsibilities, what we want to do is lift some of those responsibilities. Again, we're talking about trauma, triggers, and changing the trajectory. When you've been traumatized, most of the time you feel as though you have no value, because you have lack of understanding as to why this has happened. If you're a child and you've been traumatized, you don't have the skills or the mindset to process your next step. That's why you have parents, to protect you. Okay, so when we're looking at a society where all of the violence is taking place, we have to kind of wonder, where is it coming from? What's going on in the household? Is there a household? Where's the love? Where's the guidance? Where's the foundation? When you have teenagers that's able to just sign themselves out of school and no one is held accountable. Remember, back in the day, we had truant officers. So if you missed class so many days, they were at your parents' house knocking on the door. There's so many things that have been taken away from the community. We wanna seem like we don't know what's going on. But if we look at things as a whole, we do know what's going on. And the reason we know what's going on is because we are experiencing it every day. So if the teenager is not in school and the teenager it doesn't have any adult supervision, where does that leave him? Or where does that leave her? So when we're talking about changing the trajectory, we have to know that we're going to have to partner with the school system. Some things we're going to have to bring back, maybe truant officers. In your communities, do you have boys and girls clubs? How many boys and girls clubs have been closed down? How many PAL centers, police athletic leagues are no longer in existence? You know, sometimes when we're talking about money and we're talking about budgets, those social service amenities are the first to go. So those are the things that we want to look at as well. So being traumatized and looking at the triggers that some of these children are experiencing. If I have no value and I don't know who I am, how can I look at you and have put value on your life? If no one is loving on me, if no one is showing me the way, how can I have value on you? So we have to look at these things that these children are facing on an everyday basis. No foundation, no love. We know that love covers a multitude of sins, but we also know that love can has everything to do with a child's mindset and their next moves. Whether they rear or go astray, is something about that love that will pull them back. But if there's no love, then there's no balance to pull them back. I took this class on criminal minds. It was called Psychology of Criminal Mind and Behavior and Criminology. And what the gentleman talked about was habilitation and rehabilitation. Habilitation means to help someone process and gain a skill set, gain knowledge. It's like to train him in which or where he should go or she should go. It's about giving them the tools that they need to move forward. It's about renewing their minds and allowing them to have a process or teaching them a process where they can add value to their life. Rehabilitation is what we find in the prison system, where the system has the thought process of rehabilitating, which allows an inmate to revisit the tool set, the skill set that they already have. But if we can do some prevention, being in the school systems, in the elementary schools, and teaching values and allowing a child to set a goal. When was the last time you heard someone ask a child, what do they want to be when they grow up? Those are the questions that we were asked when we was in school. What do you want to be when you grow up? Who's your idol? You know, they have a different mindset with all the electronics. They have a different mindset with the rappers. They have a different mindset, sometimes a thought process or ideology of grandeur. But if we as community leaders, as pastors, as ministers, and as friends and family, if we can show them that and have that conversation with them, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they could very well say, I don't know. And in that process of them saying, I don't know, accept their I don't know and help them walk through some ideals. You know, it was a guy on I think it was oh gosh, America's Got Talent, and he was playing his banjo, playing his guitar, and he was singing, and they asked him at the end, what do you want to do? He's 18 years old. Well, what do you want to do? He clearly stated, I don't know. You know, I've taken a class on mindfulness. Sometimes we have to be in the moment. You know, when we're dealing with our children, when we're dealing with our grandchildren, when we're dealing with friends and family, we have to be mindful. We have to be present to hear what they're saying, because sometimes it's not always what a person says, it's what they're not saying. Amen. So with Mr. Staten E. Saminan, he says that when you're dealing with habilitation, you have to allow the person to be who they are, accept them who they are, and allow them to put their feelers out there. Okay. However, when a person is being rehabilitated, you allow them to be who they are, but you also might have to show them what they did before didn't work and how they can do something different. Sometimes you can take a person that might have sold drugs, but you have to relate to them that selling drugs didn't work for you. However, you do have entrepreneurial skills. So what about selling socks or jeans or flowers, you know, to recreate who you are, to recreate yourself, to reimagine what you want your next step to be. So we have to be mindful in those areas when we're talking about trauma, when we're talking about triggers, when we're talking about people, when we're talking about working with people and who people are and accepting them for who they are and having the mindset to love them in the place that they're in. So in talking about trauma, we know that there's three main types, which is acute, chronic, and complex. And I don't know if I mentioned it or not, but the complex is exposure to very multiple traumatic events, which is ongoing. So can you imagine a child in an environment where they're being abused every day, where they're being called names every day, you know, from the age of, from birth to 10? What does his life look like at 16? Again, what will make a person want to just pick up a gun and go out and shoot somebody that look like them? Those are the questions that we have to ask ourselves. When we talk about triggers, as part of the triggers, we're talking about pain. What is pain? Pain is discomfort. Pain is dis-ease. Pain is, you know, we talk about our light afflictions, but what about those debilitating afflictions? What about those times where you're crying out and you need help and you just don't have anyone? So, but we're talking about the society that we're living in. You know, we can, again, look at our family and assess our family and say, oh, well, they're doing fine. They're okay. But have they always been okay? Have they always been okay? And if you have a friend or family member that you know isn't okay, do you have the tools that's needed to allow them to get some help, whether it's in confidence or whether they confide in you? There's a number, and this is just a social worker in me, but there's a number 211 that's available all over the 50 states, which is the state helpline. Whether you're in Indiana, Delaware, Maryland, Missouri, wherever you are, 211, you can get the help that you need. Whether you want to talk to someone about getting a job, whether you want to talk to someone about mental health, whether you want to talk to someone about housing, there is help out there. And I think as pastors, sometimes we don't allow the congregation the opportunity to ask for help, because after all, we're supposed to pray. We're supposed to pray and we're supposed to fast. So we're supposed to pray and we're supposed to fast. If there's a situation that I'm going through, who am I supposed to talk to about it? One thing I want to say is pastors, ministers, none of us are superhuman. None of us are superhuman, and none of us should put ourselves in a position where we are not approachable. That's one of the things about getting help. People have to feel comfortable with sharing their information. When we're talking about triggers, some people are experience moments of anxiety by something that has been triggered and have no idea what they're experiencing. So anytime you have had a traumatic experience and you're having a conversation and there's a word, let's just say that someone says the word blue, and that word blue takes you back to the blue room or the blue red bedspread or the blue shirt, you start feeling this anxiety and you have no idea what you're experiencing. But in that moment, you either fight or flight. And then if you fight, the person that you're in conversation with have no idea what just happened. But there was something that triggered that anxiety. So even in our personal lives, we have to be conscious and know our triggers. Some triggers can just make you eat. You might not get violent. You might just eat. Some triggers will make you cry. You have no idea why you're crying. Some triggers make you angry. You have no idea why you're angry. So as we do self-assessments, I'm good at that. I think we all should do a self-assessment every now and then just to see where we are, since we're constantly giving out. Because when you give out, you know that you will deplete if no one is pouring back in. Okay, that one was free for the panel. Okay, amen. So let's talk about so that pain. You talked about people hurting people, hurt people. So we talked about the pain. But what about internal conflict? What about those people that are suffering through internal conflict? You ever heard anyone say it's the enemy, the inner me that you're battling with?
Mm-hmm.
Some people are on the street. You see their mouth moving, but they're not saying anything, nor do they have earplugs in. But they're in a battle. They're in a battle, that internal conflict. What did Paul say? Even when I want to do right, wrong is forever before me. So if I want to do right and wrong is there, who do I go to? Who do I talk to? Are we making ourselves available? Are we making 211 available? Because you can call 211 and tell them that you got this situation and they will, yeah, the devil made them do it. You can call 211 and they'll have this conversation. And in that process, they can hook you up to someone else to get you the help that you need. And it's easy. Someone said the devil made me do it. It's easy to say the devil made me do it. But at the end of the day, when you look in the mirror, who is the real devil? We got to take responsibility. We got to take responsibility. We have to put on the whole armor of God every day. And as we grow and mature, we have to share the information. We have to share the information. So internal conflict is the struggle within. We're talking about morally. We're talking about sexually. We talk about religion. We talk about politics, self-image. All of those things, it's possible warring going on in there. What do we do about it? How do we approach it? How does society approach it? Society is not doing a good job at setting an example. That's why we have the shootings, senseless shootings. whether it's somebody shooting somebody on the corner, whether it's a drive-by, or whether it's somebody going into school, a shopping center, a supermarket, it's senseless. It's senseless. I heard something on the news today, had nothing to do with guns, but my heart sank. 51 people died in a truck being transported to only God knows where. What's the mindset of that? What kind of trauma have those people experienced that they will be put in a position to drive a truck with human beings in the back of it, regardless of where they were going, regardless of what they were doing? What was the mindset? And when we talk about trauma, when we talk about triggers, we have to talk about the mindset. What is the mindset of society? You know, we're here, we come together on so many different platforms, and we're talking about, you know, uniting and building and, you know, and loving and reconditioning and rethinking and refocusing. And we're talking about all of these things. But it's obviously that the world at large, that the community at large are not thinking about these things. So how do we come into play to put these things in motion? Is it enough to invite your neighbor over? Is it enough to speak to your neighbor every day? Then your community might be a smooth community. It might not be any problems in your community. It might be outside of your community. So what do? Open up another church? I don't think it's wise to open up another church. I think it's wise to go in and work with the church that's already doing whatever they can do to add an extra set of hands or an extra set of legs or an extra lesson. Because there are people out here on a daily basis. Preachers take a corner. You're talking about fathers and sons. You're talking about all of these different, even Reverend VJ last week was talking about the things that he do in his community. So to be able to have a clarion call for the community, we attended one 2 Saturdays ago with Reverend Jefferson. You know, he had called for the men, but just so happened some of the women showed up. Amen. Come on. It's okay. Not to hear. Let me know it's okay. Some of the women showed up and he was glad to have us there. But, you know, that call of fighting. We're in, not only are we in a physical warfare, we're in a spiritual warfare. So we have to pray. We have to fast. We have to be spiritually in tune to what the natural eye is not seeing. Because there's some things that go on. I was talking to my husband last night about the things that's going on in the spirit that we're experiencing in the natural, but that's where it starts. So some things that we're praying about in the spirit, we have to bring it down until it manifests in the natural. So we talk about those internal conflicts. Now let's talk about negative environments, how children are raised. Are they raising each other? How were the parents raised? Did the parents have morals? I look at my children who are between the age of 39 and 47 that have children between the age of 3 and 26. And I look at how they parent. And I laugh sometimes because I hear them saying things to their children that I said to them that I didn't think they were listening. But apparently they were. So in this process, while we have young parents that have really become friends and there's no boundary, that's what I love about Healthy Families of America and True Family Values, because there's a perimeter, there's boundaries, there's a foundation, there's principles for you to teach and for you to stand on. Again, how do we get those into the families? How do we stop the mom from calling the daughter a B and the daughter calling the mom a B. We're not friends. But if that's your norm, how do we go in and change it? That's traumatizing in itself. Once you find out that that's not how society operates, and you go out into the public realm and you're the only one that's using that language, that's traumatizing, because this is what you know. So how do you change it if there's not a change agent for you to reach out to? So again, the schools, the Boys and Girls Clubs, the PAL centers, the church. The church used to be social services. But somewhere, something went terribly wrong. Because when the pandemic happened, it wasn't like the churches were left open. They were closed too. So now we're in a all-out war, a spiritual warfare, in spiritual warfare and in physical warfare, because we're fighting for our lives. In Indiana, I think it's after the 1st of July, no one needs a permit to carry. No one needs a permit to carry a weapon, to carry a gun, but you need a permit to drive a car. Come on, how does that work? What's going on here? What's happening? So we talk about trauma, we talk about triggers, we talk about changing the trajectory. The only way we can change the trajectory, the path, is to change the minds of the people. Again, we can start with the children, but we need the parents as well. So do we send out flyers? Do we go on street corners with bullhorns? I've been in marches. I've been in prayer meetings. I've been, just experiencing every possibility to bring in those that need help. And it's a difference between needing help and wanting help. Because you have some people that need help, they don't want help. Then you have some people that want help, that can't get help. So again, we have to take position and do almost a roll call to allow outsiders in to come in and say what their needs are, and to be conscious of their needs. Because when there's a need, the person is going to do whatever's necessary to fulfill that need. I go to Anderson once a month on Tuesdays as a volunteer for a food bank, and in that process, we give out food, but in the process of giving out food, we ask questions to see what other needs you might have. Do you need this food as a supplement because you're working and you just ran out of money? Or do you need this food because you don't have a job at all? Or do you need this food because you're here to take it to someone else? We ask those questions to try to get understanding as why the food is needed. And then not only that, she also has personal items that are given out. But that conversation takes place in that moment. And those are the things that I think we have to do to change the trajectory, is to start having conversations in the community and put ourselves in a position where we can enlighten, educate, and empower. And that will bring about the change. Ephesians 1:18 says, I pray, and this was Paul writing to who wrote Ephesians. It says, I pray that the eyes of your heart may be enlightened, so that you will know what is the hope of his calling, because God has a hope and calling for each and every individual. What are the riches of the glory of his inheritance? And it says in the saints. But how do we get society, those that are underserved in society, to become saints, to be in a place to receive Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior, to be in a place where they can be matched and start to build a family where they can be blessed. How do we what is the clarion call for society to be enlightened, to be educated? You know, again, those resources. What are the resources? What are the training possibilities? Do they go through the Department of Labor? Is there an interest where they can become a CNA? Is there interest where, you know, they can volunteer for a while and then decide, you know, what best fits them? But we have to be able to enlighten them. You know, if you've been doing something for so long and that's your norm, if no one points out to you that there's a better way, if no one points out to you, well, you know, you've been doing this for years and it just doesn't seem to be working because you're still in this same place. If no one brings that to your attention, that's your norm.
Yeah.
That's your norm. So we have to be able to translate in a way to say, yes, this is where you are, but where would you like to go? And in that process, we are enlightening, we're educating in a way to let them know that they have value, bringing them up, you know, in a place that they're needed. People want to be needed. People want to be loved. People want to be cared for. People want to be respected. But if the mind has been disillusioned and has experienced that trauma, and those triggers are constant, wherein every time someone says something to you, you become offensive. Something has went terribly wrong. So how to talk them down, how to talk them off the bridge and have a general or decent conversation to put them on a place of understanding and allow them to give you their perspective that you can understand where they are, to move them into a place of change. Because that's what we want to be, is change agents. So we're going to enlighten, we're going to educate, and then empower. Once that information has been received, and it can be believed and not be received. So for them to receive the information and process it, where they're in a position to say, okay, you know what? I've thought about what you said, and you're right. I have been doing this for 20 years and it's not working for me. Maybe you're right. Maybe I should, you know, try something different. But what can I do? This is what I've been doing. Okay, well, let's talk about your skills. Let's empower them. Let's let them know that they have strengths. Yeah, you might have weaknesses, but you have strengths too. So let's empower them and redefine who they are. Give them something that could possibly even be tangible that they can hold on to. You know, in Acts, Paul gave handkerchiefs, and that was a connection. So to be able to give somebody something that's a connection, that let them know that you care, whether it's a pamphlet, whether it's a piece of paper, whether it's a card, you know, something tangible that they can hold on to say, you know, when I feel like I'm falling this time, I can call Reverend Oliver. When I feel like I'm falling this time, I can call Minister Nadia. When I feel like I'm falling this time, I can tap into EJ, or I can contact the Sacramento Family Church. Oh, well, there's Michael Jenkins. Maybe I can call Dr. Jenkins because this thing is so much bigger than me. Just maybe if we make ourselves available just enough to change a person's mindset.
Absolutely.
That they want something different, that they want to do better. It's going to take enlightenment, education, and empowerment. With that being said, I want to read a poem that I wrote probably in 2005. I worked in the prison system for 13 years. And in that process, I listened to a lot of stories. I listened to a lot of things that guys were saying. I worked in the women's prison for 2 years, and then I transferred into the men's prison for the remainder. And during that time, I heard a lot of stories. I heard a lot of family issues. I heard a lot of devaluing. I heard a lot of hurt. I heard a lot of pain in that process. And when I left the prison, when I retired from the prison with the early retirement, I wrote this book. It's called Time Served, a collection of poetry. And as I was going through this process, I rediscovered this poem. And it says, it's titled Price Value. But it says, if I were platinum, then would I be treated as if I was precious and rare, instead of a burden to bear? Could I keep someone that cares? Maybe my life would be more worth than merit. It would be crazy if bodies were converted into carrots. The police would never attack me. Instead, they would guard me. I would be in high demand instead of people giving up on me and trying to discard me. It seems the world could care less if we perish, while platinum and diamonds are adored and cherished. How is it that mere stones, glistening and gleaming, hold more value and admiration than us as human beings? It's sad that at the highest value can be placed on such a small object, while life is treated as if it holds no value at all.
Wow.
So we have a society, we have a generation that feel as though they hold no value. And in them feeling that way, no one else has value. So we're in a society that has somewhat missed the mark on our young people. And I say that because we're the parents and the grandparents, we're the parents and the grandparents. So I thank you for this opportunity to share. And I pray that I've been enlightening to someone on the call, and I'm open for questions.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Alexander. That was really powerful. We have been enlightened, we have been educated, and we have been commissioned. And that's the empowerment piece, but we have been commissioned. Just like to throw out the few things that you were saying and open it up for discussion. I think that you had just said there was these three categories of trauma: acute, chronic, and also complex. But I think one of the things that struck me in all that you just said, which was all powerful, was that about the 18-year-olds, sometimes we don't realize that their minds are still developing, and then they have this inanimate object in their hands, and then they're dealing with the trauma, that they have experienced in their home and their communities, and all the extenuating circumstances that surround their environment, and then the triggers, and then all those things all mixed up. And when it is true that what you just said too, with young people, they have not developed to make really true wise decisions, so they know what was taught to them. That's all they know, and so you gave a whole litany of what has been taught to those who are vulnerable to commit these crimes in America and violence. And so I really appreciate all that you said. One of the major things that I want to open it up that you did say in all that you just said, and I realized that we don't really have real, true investment in some of these things that you're talking about, all these points that you're put in, because each community is different. Everyone has a different nuance to what has traumatized them, what triggers them. As you mentioned, the Black American community, me and you, we have done the mental health in the Black American community, because that's something that the Black American community and Hispanic community, we do not go to therapists. It's just something, it's almost like a taboo,
Yes.
It's a cultural taboo. You don't go to therapists and stuff like that. But in reality, there's so much trauma, we do need that, and some of us are, many of our communities are, some of the perpetrators of some of this crime and violence. And as you said to another, and that goes to all the communities. So thank you so much. There's just so much I could go and just share with you and what you just shared with us. And wanted to open up to anyone. Bring Dr. Jenkins is here. It's good to see him as well. If he wanted to come on and share a few points and give us a greetings as well. Welcome, Dr. Jenkins. And thank you again, Dr. Alexander.
Amen.
Alan Alexander, thank you so much for all you're doing in many areas of leadership. Just want to ask you a question, and then I think we can go to others' questions, Reverend Oliver. Thank you for doing this program. Dr. Alexander, you've done a lot in the community for years. And what did you find was the best way to reach the young people before they picked up guns and started shooting people? How did the churches help you, or was it community programs, or a combination? What was your best experience of taking a young, like VJ said, Dr. VJ Smith last week? We can intervene, and I think that's the one thing that is really the most important thing. We can intervene. We've got to be involved with these families. We've got to get families involved with families. What was best for you in changing the direction of young people, which I know you've done many?
Okay. Well, the one thing that sticks out for me the most, Dr. Jenkins, is with the ministry, the outreach. We had an outreach component that was an anti-bullying program. Mm-hmm. So in the anti-bullying program, it provided a safe place for children 8 to 18.
Wow. Okay.
So, and we had different groups, different leaders, different counselors for different age groups. But that allowed a safe place that, sometimes, especially in our community, it is said that, if someone hits you, hit them back. If you're going to school and you don't have breakfast at home, sometimes you can be mocked going to school, eating a school lunch. So there was children that would come in with different situations. We provided a safe place for them to share that information. And then we empowered them. We gave them tools to allow them to process what was happening. We taught them conflict resolution, which means that you think things through. You don't always have to put up your dukes. Then they would fight. So now it's a completely different process of when you're angry. But we would teach them to think things through. Okay, that happened to you because our class was on, our class was on Saturday mornings. So we would talk about it on Saturday morning, but we would set up a scenario and say, well, how do you think you should handle it when you go to school Monday and this happens? And how to confront a bully. If someone's approaching you all the time, they're only approaching you because they feel as though you're not going to stand up to them. So you have to, and to encourage them and empower them to tell someone, no, you're not going to treat me like that. You're not going to talk to me like that today. You're not going to put your hands on me today. But we put them in position. And their mantra was, I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me. My grandchildren still say it to this day, and they still stand on that to this day. So, we have to be able to allow a safe place for the children. That was one thing. Another thing we did, a lot of times, some parents would just bring their kids and drop them off. So we had to put a person in the parking lot in front of the building to be able to talk to the parent while the child was getting out of the car, because it's very important that the parent plays a role in the child's life. Because again, it's hard for a child to accept if my parents don't care for me, how will anyone else care for me? So that's kind of hard. So we had to engage, as we were engaging the children, whether we had to meet the parent in the parking lot, we would do that we would have them as engaged as well. And we would let them know, okay, when you come to pick them up, you or the dad, the aunt, the grandmother, someone needs to come inside to see what's going on. So when I talk about pairing up partnership with the school system, again, Healthy Families of America, No Child Left Behind, True Family Values, all of those things are prominent to how a child is raised in their mind process, their thought process. So those are the things, that was one of the tools that we used, was the anti-bullying program. And then for the parents, what we would do was go on trips, whether it was to the Philadelphia Zoo, whether it was to an art museum, but we would set up trips to kind of trigger the parents' curiosity as to, well, where are they taking my kid and why do they want to go there? So they would have to come in for orientation to see where we were going and what we were doing once we got there, and that would engage them and they begin to participate as well. But it has to be a balance. You have to have the children and the parent involved.
Dr. Madeline, maybe Reverend Oliver, maybe Dr. Madeline could help us develop a survey so we could see if there are programs in our own cities that are dealing with bullying and involving the community and also helping reach out to the young people. Officer Anthony Melee, who was on a couple of weeks ago, was really excellent about that. He said one trip to a museum for a young person from the Bronx or any community that's a challenge can change a person's life. Many times they don't get out of the environment that they're in, and somebody takes care of them and gets them to see there's a bigger world out there. And really, so maybe you can help us develop a way to survey our cities and see what's available, because we have so much in resources through the clergy of ACLC Women in Ministry, the Ambassadors for Peace, and everything you were naming too, Dr. Madeline. Churches at large are so many have a lot to offer, but many don't know how to connect. They don't know how to dive in except just, beginning. So I think we can help. I think we can make a big difference. What we're learning from this program is, yes, there's many aspects to the problem, but the number one aspect is how do we help people change so that they don't lose control? And I was just reading also that domestic violence is really one of the most dangerous calls that officers get, because a lot of times violence occurs there because the person who's getting being called, or the police are being called about, has already lost control. And even their wife or their spouse is afraid of them, even though they have a family, they love each other, but somebody loses control.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And the largest number of the domestic violence happens on Super Bowl Sunday.
Really?
Yes.
Really? Wow.
Yes. And it's something that we don't talk about often, but it's important to know that men are in abusive relationships too. When we talk about domestic violence, we automatically want to think about the woman being abused, which is a majority of the time. But there are men that are in domestic violence situations and do not, know how to get out. And one thing we would do, Dr. Jenkins, with public health, we would put cards in public bathroom stalls that will give the numbers for help. If you were in a domestic violence situation, there will be a card in the bathroom stall that you could dial that number and get help before leaving whatever public place you were in.
Wow. Hey, thank you, Reverend Oliver. Thank you, Dr. Madeline.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Madeline. Thank you, Dr. Jenkins. I think, as Dr. Jenkins said about the survey, I think I thought about putting together a whole litany of these particular points that you shared. And like I said, the real thing that there's no real investment We need a national investment in those particular points and understanding where is the origin of some of these triggers, where are the origins of these traumas, and really take them seriously, and making it applicable to, what we as the social community or even our government, taking it more serious, and not that's just that community over there, but that community is really affecting itself in the greater and global community. So those points need to be addressed more seriously. Is one of the things that you just said too, and someone put in the the text about the power of God, but the power, everything that's happened is a lack of love and a lack of value.
Mm-hmm.
If you feel devalued, you're going to feel lack of love. I've dealt with just in open the floor and anybody else. I've talked to men who were in prison, tough guy, those guys like that. And when we can get together without anybody around, my daddy wasn't there.
Yeah.
I felt, big tough guy. You were, so what does daddy represent? He represents love. You know what I mean? Family, what does represent? Love. So he's in prison. He's a product of all these triggers and traumas that needs to be addressed. Anyone else like to add to share as we come into the close? Maybe I can read did you read that, Reverend Oliver? There are different nuances in different communities. And we discussed that there is true. The mass shootings have mostly not come from communities of color. Sometimes even material abundance allows for terrible trauma and neglect. I can't see because let me move this here. Neglect. Can anyone?
Sometimes even material abundance allows for terrible traumas of neglect, as well as the substance abuse and domestic issues of abuse among parents of all communities. That's from Andrea Higashibaba. Thank you.
Thank you. That's true.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. The mass shooters are not occurring in the community, the minority communities. It's that's shocking, actually.
Exactly. But in that process, we have to look at, if you leave your community to go into another community, still something's not right.
Mm-hmm.
Something somewhere, and we look at nurture versus nature. So what is again, what trauma have you experienced in your community that you will go into someone else's community? Nevertheless, you have experienced some type of trauma. And what the trigger pushed you to go into a supermarket, to go into a school, to go on a playground, that there was a trigger, there was an offset of something that happened in you. Sometimes a child can be abused and learn to take it. And they take it, and they take it, and they take it. And in their little minds, they're thinking, this is not going to continue to happen to me. This is not going to continue to happen to me. We don't know the verbiage that's attached to that assault, because that's what they are, assaults. We don't know the verbiage that's attached to that. So when we talk about changing the mindset, the mind is powerful, but for someone to leave their community to go into someone else's community, there's still trauma that has been experienced somewhere.
That's true.
Dr. Oliver, Andrea just wrote back for Dr. Adeline that, a sense of a lack of love, a lack of value comes from the lack of love. Mm-hmm. And knows no borders. That is so true.
That's so true.
There is no one to
and as parents, believe it or not, our children like it when we set boundaries, because setting those boundaries let them know that you care. My mom told me not to run out in the street. She set a boundary. Why? Because a car could come and hit me. that child is smart enough to figure those things out. But where there's no boundaries, this is what a child says. And I know because I've counseled those children, this is what they says. Oh, my mom don't care. My dad don't care. My parents don't care. Can you come over after school? Oh yeah, I can come over after school because my parents don't care. Because there's no boundaries. There's no foundation.
And I agree with you, Doctor. If you realize that sometimes we're listening to conversations of people out there and they're going over what mama used to say and what daddy used to say. And what they're saying is that they heard, like you said, your grandchildren, your children heard because they're repeating. We hear because they were grandizing the discipline that they remember that they received, you know, that was saying those are the boundaries and you've crossed those boundaries because they should not be crossed. And you hear conversations. You remember my mom used to tell me, blah, blah, blah. So that goes to show and to confirm what you just shared with us, that kids are looking for discipline.
They're looking for that. And, you know, we talk about training up a child. You train up a child the way they should go. And even if they depart from it, they'll return. And I think they have to depart sometimes to really develop their relationship with God. You know, we can tell the child, but unless the child experiences their relationship and come into their place of knowing who Heavenly Parent is and having that established relationship that they know they can go before the throne, you know. But this whole concept of disregarding people, you know, that it has to be some type of self-hatred.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's one of the things that you did share that I thought was a very profound statement. It's a real statement. If you're not valued and you're called names all your life, I think Reverend Jenkins do remember in a conference when Dr. Kasongo was talking about the trauma that is infringed upon some of the Black community because of their color, because of their etc. That contributes as well, because that contributes to your own self-loathe and self-hate and no value. So when I look at the other person out there, I don't value that person. So, you know, there's no conscientious, what you call feeling about that particular person. And these are dangerous points that we all have to really look at in all these communities, as you said, in the communities, others coming from another community to commit violence to a community that is not theirs. It comes from some trauma somewhere, you know, that causes that you think in that manner to pick up a gun and go shoot. So this is what we, as we wrap up, this is what I think that we are attempting to do. And I think these are not just conversations, but what we need to do is, like Dr. Jenkins said, create surveys, and also it's so brilliant to put those things in those cards into the stall. You know, these are little things that can save lives and help people that they're looking at. They can go and these are also preventions.
Yes.
Well. Right. There are in the category of prevention. And I think a lot of that has to be done. You know, it's just not changing the laws of the guns. And as you just said, where are these guns coming from? That is the issue. But also the gun is an inanimate object. And we have to deal with those who are manipulating that gun for the sake of violence. And what is triggering them? Thank you, Dr. Madeline. And where is their trauma really coming from? We want to thank you so much for your profound, and we will continue to talk and get together with VJ. So in conclusion, I would like to just share that what we're going to do is, I think the next one, I'll let you know, we're going to have VJ Smith, Reverend Smith, yourself, Dr. Rouse, and I believe Dr. Little. Just come on and each one say something so we can find a common synergy in order to maybe put a manual together that can go around the country to begin to take the best practices. There are best practices. You don't have to recreate the wheel, but there are best practices. And somehow some organizations are like islands on their own, you know? So we have to feel that we're not islands on our own. We need to come together
Yes.
and make some things happen. And I think that's what we're going to do. You know, as you already know, as we conclude, from Mother Moon, who is the founder of the UPF that is sponsoring this, really had a very deep concern about gun violence in America. And so as we conclude this, we want to thank Dr. Jenkins, thank EJ, all those people behind the scenes. And I see a new face, Donna Avey. It's good to see her there. And all the other brothers and sisters, Reverend Franklin, who is always here, and Nadia, everyone, I want to thank you all for coming on. And again, let's give a round of applause for the profound talk that our sister, Dr. Madeline Alexander, has shared with us. That what I call, again, enlightenment, education, and it has empowered us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you very much.
Thank all of you for your time.
July 6th, I believe. We will see you.
Thank you, Mr. Aiko.
So
Alright.
wonderful today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Alexander.
Thank you, sir.
See
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Dr. Alexander, that was excellent. That was superb.
Very good. Very good. If I must say so myself.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
I heard every single word.
Who said that? I may say so myself. Who was that?
That was her other half.
Oh, the other half. Oh,
The other half.
Other half.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins.
Thank you.
Wonderful, Dr.
Yes.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Everyone.
thank you, Mr. Jenkins.
you.
I think it's good to see
Thank you
you.
so much.
Good to see you.
All right.
Thank you.
Hey, good to see you,
Reverend Franklin,
Zachary. Thank you.
Hey,
Right.
Daryl.
Hey, good to see you, Wayne.
Hi.
Wayne, good to see you. God bless.